Welcome to the Content Repurposer podcast, where we explore different ways how author can repurpose their book's content for greater impact. I'm your host, Pooja Arshanapally, and today we're focusing on the author Agatha Christie. Agatha Christie is an English writer widely regarded as the Queen of Crime and is one of the most famous authors in history. She is best known for her 66 detective novels and 14 short story collections. Her works have sold more than 2 billion copies worldwide, making her the best-selling fiction writer of all time, according to the Guinness World Records. Agatha Christie's influence on the mystery genre has cemented her status as one of the most significant authors in the 20th century. But before becoming an author, Agatha Christie had several experiences that influenced her writing career. She worked as a nurse during World War I, starting in 1914, as she volunteered at a hospital where she assisted in caring for wounded soldiers. She also promoted her work in the hospital dispensary, and this experience gave her extensive knowledge on drugs and poisons, which she later used in her mystery novels. And while working in the hospital dispensary during World War I, she was surrounded by potential lethal drugs, and this environment inspired her to center her first story around a death by poisoning. And during World War I, she conceived the plot for her first novel, The Mysterious Affair at Styles. She completed her first novel in 1916, but it wasn't published until 1920. So Agatha Christie has written so many books, but in this episode, I will cover the most popular books that she has written. So the first book is The Mysterious Affair at Styles, that was published in 1920. It's her first book, and this was set in World War I, and it follows a person who investigates the poisoning of a wealthy widow. The second book was The Murder of Roger Ackroyd, and this was published in 1926. This was nominated for the Best Novel of All Time award by the British Crime Writers Association in 1990. Next popular book that she has written was Murder on the Orient Express, published in 1934. This is one of Agatha Christie's most famous novel and has been later adapted into several films. Another book that she's written, and this was her best-selling novel, which was And Then There Were None, published in 1939, and it has over 100 million copies sold and tells the story of 10 strangers invited on an isolated island where they are mysteriously killed off one by one. Even though Christie has received many awards throughout her career and she has produced many books, however, a lot of her books have been widely recognized and celebrated in the mystery genre. But her works not only stayed as books, but it was also updated into the big screen. So one of her books, And Then There Were None, the first film was produced in 1945. The second film that was produced was Witness for Prosecution, and this was produced in 1957. This film received 6 Academy Award nominations, including Best Picture, Best Director, Best Actor for Laughton, and it also won the Golden Globe for Best Foreign Film. In 1974, Murder on the Orient Express was filmed, and this film received 6 Academy Award nominations, Best Supporting Actress. The next film that was produced was Death on the Nile, produced in 1978. This film received an Academy Award for Best Costume Design. And in 2017, Murder on the Orient Express was again adapted into a modern style, and this received Academy Award for Best Costume Design. So obviously I didn't go through all the adaptations through film. These adaptations represent most of the high-profile Agatha Christie films, but there has been many others, including movies and series, and her work continues to be adapted for the big and small screens, which just shows how popular and evergreen her content is. But not just film, Agatha Christie also adapted some of her several works into the stage. One of her famous works was The Mousetrap, and this played in London's West End on November 25th, 1952, and has been running continuously ever since, setting a world record. It has now been seen by over 10 million people. In 1954, she became the first female playwright to have 3 plays running simultaneously in the London's West End: The Mousetrap, Witness for Prosecution, and Spiderweb. And then Witness for Prosecution won an Edgar Award for Best Play in 1955. She also adapted it to the radio, so BBC Radio 4 has produced numerous adaptations of Christie's works. For example, The Murder of Roger Ackroyd was adapted for BBC 4 in 1987. These have been ongoing, and a recent production, including a 2014 adaptation of And Then There Were None. Some of her works have been adapted into graphic novels since the 2000s. So, for instance, Murder on the Orient Express was adapted as a graphic novel in 2007. So these adaptations make Christie's stories accessible to new audiences, especially to the younger generation. Even though Agatha Christie has passed, her legacy of works will still remain, and people are still going to continue to discover them in different ways. So that's all for today's episode of the Content Repurposer podcast. Subscribe to this podcast if you found this episode helpful. Join us next time as we continue to explore how authors can repurpose their content for greater impact.